mortar to assist in an uneven subfloor, since it can be installed thicker than regular thin set. That's pretty much it. No, that's your answer.
Let me explain that. There's a big misunderstanding for what we can and can't do with thin sets, even if it's a medium bed. Let me point out a couple of things. The name thin set is the name of a method, as opposed to the older methods that we work with was thick set, also known as wet set. This thin set methods that we're using a lot today, more so than the old wet set or thick set methods. And the reason why is because of the lightweight engineered structures will not support the weight and or can be an issue with the old thick set methods. So we're using a lot more thin set methods today. Now we've got methods available for both the thick set and the thin set, but there is no standard now set for medium bed. That would be in between the two, right? If you do the math and figure it. Well, there's no standard for that. However, we do have some new information coming out in the handbook on what is medium bed as far as a mention of the product. But like I say, we don't actually have a standard as of yet. Hopefully we'll have one shortly. But the misunderstandings with the medium bed or the thin set methods is skim coating and truing up or building up. That's high risk. Do tile contractors do that? Well, yeah, to some degree. I mean, if you break it down, what do we use when we're installing large stone that's maybe not gauged perfect? It's going to have some thick ones and some thin ones. We need to install it as best possible to get a pleasing to the eye installation. Well, we know that we are doing a little bit of that just by the nature of the products that we work with. However, if we have a big dip in the floor, a big sag, a low spot, and then we decide, I think I'll just fill that in with some thin set, let it dry, and then just new thin set, and then my tile and stone installation, that becomes a potential problem. And this is the reason why, even with medium bed. But the reason why is because of the different curing rates of the setting material itself, from thick to thin. In other words, the thinner areas cure relatively or dry out faster. They hydrate faster because there's less of the material. The thicker areas take longer for it to hydrate out, so they're a little bit slower. And that actually begins to pull from one side to the other, from one side actually trying to shrink a little more so than the other side. So it may be bonded for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. That's a good looking installation. But as those things begin to hydrate out and that stress is beginning to build up from the shrinking of the material, it can actually shear itself loose. And now it's unbonded, so it's hollow sounding. After you take it up, it has sheared loose from the tile and from the substrate, or one or the other, but oftentimes it's from both. You may have a few places that's still stuck, but it makes you think that the thin set went bad. Or we've heard this one, and that is, I've got one-sided thin set, it sticks to the floor, but it doesn't stick to the tile. So that's a potential problem. Medium beds can help, but they're not designed to build up as far as true up. They're not designed. They have a larger aggregate and other products as well, but the aggregate itself is larger because the large tile and large stone installations require a much larger notch trowel in order to get the appropriate amount of coverage on the back of the tile between the substrate. Our handbook says we need a minimum of 80% coverage. If it's an interior dry application with all edges and corners covered. If it's an exterior or wet application, we need a minimum of 95% coverage with all edges and corners covered. In order to get that kind of coverage, then we're often choosing large notch trials. Sometimes these are 3/4 inch notch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. And the typical thin sets, the multi-purpose thin sets that we've always used, in most cases are not sufficient in order for that to bond and cure out appropriately because of the thickness. Most of those common middle-of-the-road priced products can only be built up 1/4 inch below the tile and above the substrate. So your setting bed is about a maximum of 1/4 inch. If you're exceeding that, you're putting yourself at risk. You need to look into these medium bed thin sets. But They're not designed to true up with. They're designed to build up and hold the weight of the tile to get sufficient amount underneath the tile. These same manufacturers that offer these products, most of them offer true up materials. That's not medium bed thin set. They do offer their true up materials that's available.